conceptual perspective to things. People talk about a desire to be successful, all of the elements.
Good morning, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. I hope that everybody is kicking off their weekend on a good note. There is definitely a lot of things going on, and it's way too much for most to even attempt to process. So you got to be very selective of what you give your energy and your attention to. That's why I haven't been overly active in responding to a lot of the stuff that's going on, because it carries way too much spiritual weight for where I am right now. But there are some things I'm going to touch on and weigh on over the course of the next several days. There's some things I'm going to be sharing from a point and perspective of inspiration, enlightenment, and upliftment. There's going to be some things where I'm going to offer some challenges to the Black community specifically. There are going to be some things that I'm going to put in front of you um, that will challenge you personally. And I am going to be very, very uh, specific and selected about how I move about this, because I want what I do moving forward to have the most immense and productive impact that I possibly can. I want my 86,400 seconds to carry extreme weight and value. And on that note, I'm going to move into this. I thought about this for a while. It's been going on. It's actually nothing new, but it's gained some new uh, traction because it's been reshared and reopened, and a lot of people are hearing it for the first time. It's actually about 2 years old, if I'm not mistaken, and it's something that happened and transpired, uh, a few years ago. But anyway, let's get to it. Lil Boosie, Boosie Bad, whatever he's being called right now, openly admitted to paying for sexual favors from an adult to service his son and his nephew when they were around the ages of 14. I've heard that he's actually done something similar when his son was like a toddler, almost 3 or 4 years old. I don't know how valid that is, but I definitely know that he did a couple of years ago admit to paying for sexual favors for his 14-year-old son. Uh, as far as that goes, I think anybody who is truly centered in self and on a journey of spiritual awareness and enlightenment should understand where that should register on their moral and ethical scale, not to mention that it's illegal. I thought about, going live and streaming on this, but I didn't think it deserved that type of energy and effort for me to set that up. So I decided to just record it at the beginning of my day. Not really the beginning of my day. It's roughly around, I guess, 6 a.m. or so. I've been up for a while, but before most people are up and around, and it would be advantageous to do a live, I just decided to go ahead and talk about it. And where I'm going to talk about it from isn't so much what he did. He is revealing who he is and how his culture has impacted him, and the manner in which the culture objectifies women and gives men a pass, or views men in a different way. It never examines the impact of this type of behavior on the male, because it's assumed that it's okay for men to be violated at a time when they truly don't understand the dynamics of the actions at play. Um, and it is common, even, when I was growing up, 40 years ago, as a young kid, um, I would hear men in the hood say things that didn't even make sense to me then. I had a moral compass, I guess, because being reared by my great grandparents. But it was a common saying, ladies, excuse me, but if you're old enough to bleed, you're old enough to breed. And it was common. I heard it a lot from grown men. And I'm like, no, I knew that babies start their cycles way before their time to be engaged in that type of behavior. Psychologically and emotionally, they aren't prepared for the fallout that comes with that type of behavior. There are many adults who simply are not able to really truly grasp the power of intimate activity at the level of sexuality. They don't understand creating soul ties. They don't understand all of that. So when it came to it, when I first heard this 2 years ago, I gave my commentary on it and I left it alone because he was acting from a place where he is, and I'm not one because I may appreciate someone's talent or whatever. And I'm not saying I'm a big fan of his. I don't have, outside of this type of behavior, I have no ill will toward him or dislike for him. You know, he's not on my list of favorite rappers, nowhere close. But again, I understand that he has made his impact and I appreciate that. But I am never going to co-sign BS, no matter who it is. Nobody gets a pass with me. It's one of the ways I actually hold myself accountable, because if you start to find reasons to give people a pass, you'll start finding reasons to give yourself one. And I want to be held to a higher standard. And I understand there's certain places that I don't meet the standard. And so I'm challenging myself to be better every day. So when I looked at him, I said, okay, that's who he is. You know, I'm going to give my opinion on it and then I'm going to drop it and move on. I'm not going to beat a dead horse because it's going to produce likes, views, and shares. It's going to get some relevance to my channel. That has hurt me over the years, just because I don't sensationalize. I don't jump on stuff because it's hot. And a lot of people are like, Doc, why you didn't do this, or why you waited so long? It's because I want to speak truth as much as I possibly can. I want to be highly informed on the things I speak on, not emotionally charged, not speaking from a place of anger, frustration, human bias, cultural bias, none of that. I want to speak from a position of being educated on the topic. And so sometimes I'll take time to research and look at it and get an understanding and look at background, look at history, look at a bunch of other things before I speak on things. And so that has hurt the building of different social media platforms. But I have responsibility for the quality of the product that I put out, and I take that serious. Take that seriously. What I want to talk about today is not so much him. I want to talk about the fact that there are a number of people out there, in a significant number. I'm not talking about one or two people. I'm talking about there's a significant number of people who don't have a problem with it. There's a significant number of people who actually buy into this cultural phenomenon. And the idea predominantly that I'm getting is because it's a boy, it doesn't matter. I counsel children who are victims of childhood sexual abuse, CSA. I counsel women who were victims. I counsel a couple of men. It's hard to get men in because we don't want to admit that we were ever victims of something like that, especially if the perpetrator was a male. And so we keep it to ourselves. But there's enough research out there, enough empirical data to suggest that young black boys are subject to sexual abuse at a much higher rate than is assumed or postulated at this time. Not as high as the rate of young females, but extremely close. And so that's something that we obviously need to be aware of. But what we do need to understand is that it impacts their social development. It impacts their ability to relate to the opposite sex. It impacts how they view the opposite sex. It creates a dynamic and a cultural environment in which women specifically are objectified and men are given passes for unacceptable behavior. It's just men being men can no longer be an excuse for unacceptable behavior that harms the next generation. We have a responsibility to stand up and to call a foul when we see one, and be absolute and specific and steadfast in doing so, not wavering, not sitting up and kind of saying, and oh, well, maybe no, it's absolutely wrong. It's wrong on multiple levels. And we have to be aware enough to understand that a 14-year-old male is not mentally and emotionally mature enough to process what happens. How he's going to interpret the act is going to be different than someone, say, 22, 23, 24. And so the interpretation of the act sets the standard of how he responds to it, how he's going to view himself, how he's going to view women, how he's going to view sex in particular. And we wonder why we're so dysfunctional in that area. It's because we are not handling ourselves and protecting our children, and we're passing down cultural uh, cultural paradigms that function to diminish our mental health. And it's not just in the area of sex, but that's one. And I talk about this in Born in Captivity, which is my 19th book. I talk about it. And it's important that we understand that we have a responsibility socially as a collective to call out those things that are not conducive to true empowerment and inspiration and furthering the cause and the agenda of Black empowerment. We can talk about it all day. We can talk about um, Black group economics. We can talk about uh, holistic education. We can talk about reducing the recidivism rate uh, as it pertains to mass incarceration. We can talk about political potency. We can talk about all of these things, but if we don't deal with the issues at hand of protecting the next generation whom we're passing the torch to, if we continue to cripple the next generation with passed down trauma, it's going to be impossible. The future is in the children isn't just a saying. It's a saying that understands the children have the best opportunity because they have not yet been conditioned to fail. But if we are participating in the conditioning of our children to fail, we are a big part of the problem. It's up to us to change the perception, the dynamic of how we view our children, how we protect our children, how we engage one another in front of our children, how we parent, how we teach. All of those things matter. So that's my stand on it, is that I am shocked that there are people in large numbers that actually believe that what he did wasn't a big deal. Primarily, like I said, most people and almost all male, when you ask them the same question about their daughters, they deflect and change the subject. Because somewhere deep down inside, they have to know that this applies. One of the things that, again, and I don't claim to be some super parent, but one of the things that I am proud of is that when I was counseling and teaching my daughters, uh, the oldest of which now is 34, she'll be 35 this year. Good God. But she'll be 35 this year. She's been married she's been married in the double digits. I think she'll probably want me to shut up. She's probably gonna be ticked off I say at her age. But and I guarantee she doesn't looks like a little kid still. Uh, but at the same time I was counseling my daughters to preserve themselves, not to give themselves away easily. Uh, I was also telling my sons to keep it in their pants, that there's no reward or celebration that you really get or deserve for sleeping with someone that you're not old enough to understand and commit to. You're actually robbing that person and you're giving a part of you away as well. And, you know, um, my oldest married her first. My next married her first. And my next, who just graduated college in December, she doesn't have any kids. I'm not saying they're not sexually active. I'm not saying any of that things. They tell me what they want to tell me, and after they became adults, I listened. But I did not pry. I taught You know, I wasn't stalking them at their doctor's visits. In fact, I didn't go. I taught them, and I trusted what I taught them would lead them and keep them and guide them. You know, and again, I'm not claiming to be perfect. There are a lot of things I've fallen short at as a husband, as a father, and I'm striving to be better as a businessman, as a person, as a man in general. I know I have shortcomings, and that's not what I'm pushing. What I'm pushing here is there's a way you've got to think of your kids. And see, when I think of my daughters, I also think of the daughters that my son, or sons, excuse me, may mishandle. And I don't want to be responsible for that. So I counsel and consult my sons. My older sons, and I have a couple of young ones, but my older sons don't have kids. And they're 32 and 30. Don't go populating and creating something you can't afford to take care of, or that you're not going to be ready to parent in the proper way. What am I getting at? We have a responsibility to be the best we can be, and it starts with how we parent. The family is the nucleus of cultural perpetuation, character and value perpetuation. In other words, how you believe you should live your life, how you believe the world should operate, your standards, your values, your character is passed on to your children in the environment of the home. You know, how men behave is passed on in the home. How marriage is conducted is passed on in the home. How to manage and handle finances is passed on in the home. See, these type of videos won't get a lot of play, but I guarantee you that I am comfortable with leaving these as a legacy of my stand in the Black community. I may not get a lot of likes, may not get a lot of shares, but what I will get is that I stood for something, and I stood unapologetically for it. And I tried my best to live it, and I tried my best to share it on. I did the research. I created the programs. I can live with that. I did the popular thing as a young man, and it didn't produce any type of longevity in the sense of peace, purpose, or anything. Because when you move in a certain direction, the same people that sustain you and hold you up in your popularity will snatch it from underneath you in a heartbeat and allow you to crash. But when you stand on something you believe in, it doesn't require anybody else to hold it up for you. And so this is what I'm leaving you guys with. We need to do a better job of protecting our children. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. Don't forget to support the work that we're doing at the Odyssey Project. You can look at the description box, and all of the information on how you can support us is there. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day. Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in with a little special announcement. For those who have followed me for any stretch of time, you know, outside of the businesses that I run, like Myriad Business Solutions, the Visionetics Institute, Odyssey Media Group, I also do a great deal of work inside of the inner city communities in Houston, Dallas, and other areas. I'm asking now, as we push a fundraiser, that you support what the Odyssey Project is doing in the inner cities, especially with programs like Black Men Lead, which is a rite of passage initiative, and Restoring Ghettos Forgotten Daughters, which is a program focused on helping young girls, but boys as well, suffering from childhood sexual abuse, rape, molestation, domestic abuse, absentee fatherhood, and so many other things. The information will be in the box. Thank you.